Here with Dawn Hickman, K through 3 elementary principal from Wright City, who is going to share some great information as administrators pioneer this new way of leading the science of reading and specifically letters training that's been happening across the state. And it's all tied to Senate Bill 681 and this idea of getting better. And Dawn just has, having been trained as a letters content person as a teacher, has a great perspective for administrators. So we're happy to have you here today, Dawn.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and share some of my thoughts on the direction it's going and how to help.
Awesome. We'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, I like I had said when I was talking with Shauna, this is my 26th year in education, and 18 years was I was teaching first, second, and third. So those core areas of teaching the foundations of reading. And back when letters came out, their first sessions, their first books were 9 modules. I went through that training as a teacher, and it was something that was hard. It was rigorous. It was theory. Oftentimes it was overwhelming and I couldn't connect the dots to what does this mean for me in the classroom. After I went through that year training, at the very end, I realized, why didn't I have this before I even started teaching kids? I wanted to go back and get my old students and apologize, but also to go back and try it again, because what I learned was how I was teaching reading wasn't the effective way. It wasn't how the brain learned to read. And that's why I was seeing so many deficits and concerns and frustrations with our kids, that I was reaching a small population, but not all of them. And so that changed me and how I taught reading. It changed the course of the teachers that I worked with, the way we collaborated. We were able to have more in-depth conversations around specific skills, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and how that's where I'm not saying they can't comprehend or they can't read. I could articulate where their deficit was. And as a team, we could come up with solutions. And so when I became an administrator and was looking at a lot of the data, talking to teachers, I kind of came in with the assumption that everybody was getting this training and everybody was able to have these conversations. I quickly realized that wasn't the case. And as I was trying to move initiatives and have conversations, I'd send out these newsletters of, when you're talking about articulation, make sure you're letting the kids know if that's a voice or unvoiced sound. And, I'm all excited. I'm realizing it's not hitting. Nobody's understanding what I'm talking about. So once that kind of came to light, I worked with our curriculum director quite a bit of, please, can we get letters? Please, we need to get our teachers trained. Wasn't hitting a lot of traction until we went to a DESE presentation or something. I don't even know what it was. And they kind of introduced a little bit of letters a few years ago, this 5 years ago. And they went through just a phonemic awareness activity. And as you have 3 very highly professional, highly degreed individuals, as myself, the other elementary principal, and our curriculum director, and they're putting us through this drill, and I'd already been through, so I knew what to expect. And they were struggling to try to get some of the answers just because it's the thought process you're not used to doing anymore. He said, okay, on the way home, we got to figure out how to get our teachers. If we don't know this as leaders, our teachers don't know this, and that's affecting our kids. So one of the best decisions our district ever did, they allowed me to have all of our K-1 teachers spend every Wednesday professional development going through book 1 letters together. I did it with them. I told them they would hate me once they first started it because the work was rigorous. It was language they're not familiar with. It was brain research. That doesn't seem like that's our field. But I promised them that if they would stick with me for 9 months and give into it what I know they can get out of it, that they would thank me at the end of the year for helping them see a new way to teach. And it was painful. I mean, short of being cussed at, they were, why are you making us do this? This is hard work. This is irrelevant. And they'd go back and do the case studies. They did everything I asked them to do at the end of the year. We actually had a teacher who was retiring 33 years in kindergarten and came to me and said, why is it 33 years? And I just got this information. And she was an amazing teacher, but she brought in, she was like, 33 years. why didn't I learn the theory and what happens to the brain and how it learns? So to me, it's important. It's hard. And a lot of times anything that's hard, especially in our field is hard enough. A lot of times we say it's too hard. I as an admin, I had the fortune of having the background of teaching, and I had the training ahead of time. So I had the passion already. But I have teachers who come through our training for letters as a facilitator, and they get that passion, but they go back to school and their administrators are like, nope, that's not how we want to do it. Nope, we're going to do it this way. We've always done it this way, and this is the way it is. And it's unfortunate because science tells us that's not how our brain works. That's not how it works when it's reading. And there are really good practices. And our data here in our building, it's exciting to see that each year we keep increasing, we keep chipping away, we keep our conversations are rich, where we're talking about, we're sitting in impact team meetings and we're drilling down into a specific articulation of the Z sound when the S makes the Z sound and when it doesn't, and how we're going to specifically teach students, because that's important, because that's what helps us.
So I'm going to pause because you've had so many great points. So one, you're from a principal lens, just attesting to the power of letters in general, because I think since a lot of administrators don't get to attend the trainings, there might be some misconceptions on, let's face it, in education, this too shall pass, right? Let's jump on the next new bandwagon. What I hear you saying is, having been through it as a teacher, and all these testimonials of, man, this is really something we should have been trained with. It's that reading science that, don't open the can of worms of things we can't fix with college preparation, but that teachers really need it. Two, I'm hearing it goes beyond just being trained as an administrator. You're also still providing opportunities outside of the training. Because sometimes I think our teachers got the training, let's go forward, they'll figure it out. But I hear you saying, no, guys, a great practice to put into place is you've got to give your teams time to then in the moment be thinking about that training. Are there any other specific things, having led, because you're seeing the power of this work, which I think is just a great testimonial to people who haven't seen that side yet, any other specific recommendations you would give for them as far as leading in letters, giving teachers time outside of that training? What about, does letters give you a specific, I'm back to my curriculum, hey, I want to know this map, like here's when I start with this. How do we pace those skills? Can you speak to that at all?
Absolutely. And I think that's the big thing, is it's not a program. It is a college level course where you're learning theory. So you will learn through science and through research best practices of how to pace out when certain sounds should be taught before certain sounds. Okay. You'll learn specific skills and strategies to help with learning comprehension. But the purpose is to get everybody on the same page and understanding what actually happens when you learn to read. Often people don't, the basic part of learning to read is our brains are not wired to be readers. We've only been reading for a couple thousand years. I mean, we haven't been reading our whole lives, our whole existence. We started out talking. Reading was invented. Therefore, our brains weren't wired. Like when we are born, we start to model what we hear. My brain's wired. It knows that when I hear sound, I'll start to create that same sound. That's why we hear babies who are goo and caw and do all these things. Our brain's not. So to understand that, really what letters is teaching you is what is happening in the brain, and then how to go deeper into deficits that are happening because something's not wiring right, or that something's not quite processing right, where that processing isn't happening. So the first part, you have the theory. The next part, you have that drill down. I like to think of it like if you're going to the doctor gives you the whole picture kind of thing. Then there's a problem. You're going to go to a specialist. So the next part of letters is it's talking about the specialist, how to dig deeper into those deficits. So it goes into the PASS test. It goes into phonics screeners, spelling inventories, how to utilize those types of diagnostics assessments to figure out where the deficit is in this child's learning. That can be overwhelming because people say, I don't have time for that. I don't know what to do. Once you find that deficit, then it goes into, here are research-based practices on how to teach and reach and intervene to get that child where they need to be in reading. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so with some districts who maybe only had 1 or 2 people be able to attend letters training, do I hear you saying there's this need of, and I know now they're getting bigger cohorts of people. And so your recommendation is get on that bandwagon, get as many people trained as possible. Absolutely. Because there's this theory they need to know, but then we also need to provide a resource for them for that pacing. So it's not going to be an end all be all. And I think that's a really clear distinction for people. This is providing the why and the theory behind it. But then curricularly, you're also going to need a great scope and sequence of those foundational skills, but you're equipping people with the strategies they can use with that resource.
Yes, absolutely. And just think about if half your team has the information that's deep like that and the other half doesn't, you're spending the whole time teaching them. Okay, this is why we need this first. This is what phonics means. And this is the difference between phonics and phonemic awareness. This is schema, and this is what schema means. And this is how schema works into comprehension. And this is how we should teach vocabulary. I mean, these are all those underlying big pieces that if you don't have that basic knowledge, you're going to have a hard time figuring out what's my next step. So when we had our whole staff trained on it, they were then all on the same level, able to have the same conversations. And the best part was when we got to writing our curriculum, because we're working and writing our curriculum, they now all have the same foundation of knowing, oh, we got to do this first, this fits here. And then looking for resources, I don't have to worry as an administrator that we're just going to look for the bells and whistles and the really cute stuff like we used to do. They're honed in and they want a specific thing from a resource. And if it doesn't offer what we know is best practice for our kids to move them, we're not going to get it. Does that make sense? So it's fantastic. I love it. I love that the teachers, and they'll come in and they'll say, well, I liked it, but I really didn't like the phonics part of this. And the reason I didn't like the phonics part of this is because I noticed that they were using certain picture cues that actually will be confusing. So like for A apple, is a more powerful tool for a kid to remember than A alligator, because of the connection to the A and the L changes the sound. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but it's powerful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is great. So thank you so much for sharing. I think the biggest takeaway for administrators, and I'm going to reiterate, your resources aren't your standards and your resources aren't going to get you where you need to go, right? There's this foundational understanding, and that's the big takeaway for administrators to understand with letters, that it is theory, but your recommendation would be get as many people trained as possible, because understanding that theory is really what's going to help them become better content teachers at the end. And then you've also provided some great nuggets of, and make sure you give people plan time, to keep having those conversations and be prepared. I know that DESE's coming out with the recommended list. I've yet to see it. They say it's going to come out in January, but of some recommended reading foundational programs, because they're really going to need both.
Right. And to remember, programs don't teach reading, teachers do. And if your teachers don't have the power to do that. The other thing is Letters has an administrator side program. It's a condensed course that actually helps them see that other side. So as an administrator, also educate yourself in the process. You don't have to go through the whole course, go through the administrator course of it and get the Cliff Note version.
I love that. And one of the things we're going to try to do as we build up our network, keep a lookout, because, and Don, we may be inviting you, and get some collaborative, but get maybe a session of 4 collaborative meetings where as a group of administrators, we talk, we learn more about it, and really talk strategic plans of how we lead during that time, because it is a shift.
Absolutely. And know that what you're doing is building your teachers up that first year through Letters. That's all you're doing. It is not writing your curriculum. It is not providing you your resource. It's just building your teachers up and empowering them to do what they can do with the right resources, with the right program.
Awesome. So stay tuned, because hopefully we can develop something like that to help people.
That's great.
Thank you so much for your time today, Dawn.
Thank you.